The great failed romances of the 20th century. First you start laughing, then you cry. The great failed romances of the 20th century. Love may be a sham, but we still gotta try.
Welcome to the great failed romances of the 20th century. I'm singer-songwriter and historian Teddy Gray.
And I'm so vain I'd probably think this show is about me, Sam Kaufman. So Teddy, which musical menage are we peeping in on today?
Today we'll be discussing two of the most beloved singer-songwriters of the 1970s, Carly Simon and James Taylor.
Carly Simon? James Taylor? That's 4 first names in total.
And?
I just think it's neat.
Carly Simon was born to a musical family in the Bronx and began writing songs from a young age in an effort to overcome her stammer. Her earliest musical projects were with other members of her family, and she started a band with her sisters in their teens. They called themselves the Simon Sisters.
Creative. James Taylor was somewhat of a musical prodigy from birth, developing a finger-picking style of playing the guitar from a young age. Struggling with mental health issues throughout his youth, James was able to find solace in 2 things: music and drugs. Fittingly for someone making such mellow music, James had become a full-blown heroin addict by the age of 20. Aspirational.
After leaving the Simon Sisters, Carly Simon chose to go solo and immediately began to find some success after cutting her debut album in 1971, which scored a few radio hits and even won her a Grammy Award for Best New Artist.
Around this time, James Taylor began to find a wider audience as well. After releasing the album Sweet Baby James in 1970, his career took off, and soon both he and Carly had reached a level of success neither of them could ever have dreamed of.
As far as how the two's relationship began, Carly Simon has long told the story of seeing James' face on the cover of Time magazine in 1971 and blurting out, "I'm going to marry him."
It would have been more appropriate if she had blurted out, "I am going to marry him, have 2 children, divorce him, never speak to him again, but continue living in the house we shared together." But words were more expensive back then.
At the time, James was dating Joni Mitchell, but Carly vowed that soon he would be hers. And after a few meetings backstage at various shows, the two finally began dating once James' relationship with Joni had dissipated.
From there, things moved very quickly for the two, and within a few months they had already begun living together. When Carly brought up the idea of marriage, James replied that he didn't see the point, as they already loved each other and lived together. However, that same afternoon, he reconsidered, saying that maybe they should get married. When Carly asked what had changed since the morning, James said, "This afternoon, it was my idea." Red flag number 1 right there.
The two were married at a small ceremony in Carly Simon's New York apartment. Soon after, James bought a house for the two to live on Martha's Vineyard, and the couple fixed it up together to be their perfect home. Musical instruments lining the walls, various knickknacks that were meaningful to them.
A sex dungeon in the basement for special occasions. It had it all. And 2 years into their marriage, the couple welcomed their first daughter, Sally. Wow. Great segue there, Sam.
3 years later, the couple welcomed a son. While they were building the family, Carly and James continued to build their discographies as well, recording new music frequently. Despite being perceived by the public as 2 musical lovebirds, in reality, there was much turmoil inside their nest.
Speaking on their marriage, Carly Simon later said, "Our love became bipolar, switching from love to hate, lust to loathing, and back again, sometimes within a day." One of the main challenges was James' drug addiction, which had not improved in their years together.
Turns out You're So Vain was actually about James shooting up. Huh? Vain?
Jesus Christ, Sam.
What, too much?
Carly was unaware to the true extent of James' addiction. In her memoir, she recalled him shooting up heroin in front of her one night. He said to her that he had hoped feeling the shame of having her watch him as he injected might dissuade him from doing it anymore. "I can't have you and the habit at the same time. I can't," Carly later quoted him as saying. And sure enough, he was right.
As their marriage continued, James' drug abuse only worsened. To make matters worse, both Carly and James had engaged in numerous infidelities, though James seemed to be more prolific with his cheating. He had even set up a separate home with one of his mistresses in New York City, forcing Carly to confront the woman.
By the 1980s, the home that they had once blissfully shared was starting to seem more like a reminder of long-faded love, and the couple finally made the choice to separate, divorcing in 1983.
Not long after, James made the decision to finally get sober. In the years since, both artists have continued to be successful, and have had numerous other partners over the decades, so it's hard to feel too bad about how things ended.
However, according to Carly Simon, the two have not been on speaking terms since their divorce, and while she has often expressed her interest in reconciliation, she claims that James has completely frozen her out.
Or left her on red, as the kids say.
Speaking on their marriage decades later, James said, "That's sort of the point about divorce, that you go your own ways. I don't know when she determined that the relationship ended, but we communicated closely for years about the kids. Carly was important to me, but it did end."
Carly was less guarded in her feelings, stating recently that, "I do love him, and I think he's fascinating and brilliantly talented. And after all, how could I not love him, because he's the father of my children? I guess some people can do it, but they have a better ability than I do to turn all my feelings off."
Not helping the fact is that decades later, Carly still resides in the same house on Martha's Vineyard that the two once shared.
And the worst part is, she thinks he's still paying rent.
Oh, speaking of, you're late on utilities.
Oh, can I pay you in a song? Oh, once upon a time. Okay. So, Teddy, now that my rent's all covered, tell us a little about the song.
This song is called I Watched the Sunset This Morning.
Sunset in the morning? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, you probably used it as a metaphor, right?
Yep, you got me. If you'll excuse me, I need to call my editor for a moment. Get on the phone.
As previously stated, Carly Simon still lives in the same house that she once shared with James. This song finds her unable or unwilling to completely move on from their relationship, as memories of James continue to haunt the house, as well her heart.
Coincidentally, I once haunted James Taylor's house. He owed me drug money.
Sit back and enjoy I Watched the Sunset This Morning.
He ended up only paying me in song, though, so I'll be back.
Your fishing rod's still on the bookshelf where you always kept it. I don't know if you'd appreciate that. I think it's odd I left it. Our home's a living monument to love that's long been dead. The walls are lined with memories that play inside my head. Oh,
I watched the sunset this morning, out on the porch where we used to lie. I watched the sunset this morning,
and I cried, and I cried. Now all the songs I write about you start in minor keys, and rooms that we once crowded now feel hauntingly empty. I sing one part of duets on a stage with room for two, then wake up in our bed and tell myself I'm over you. But oh, I watched the sunset this morning, out on the porch where we used to lie. I watched the sunset this morning, and I cried, and I cried. Talk to me, James, talk to me. I hear you in the walls and in the tapestry. I feel you in the floorboards and the evening breeze. I hear you everywhere. Please, can we speak? I watch the sunset every morning. Darkness never waits for night. As long as I am home, my heart never dares to roam too far from you. I couldn't leave it if I tried.
the great failed romances of the 20th century. First you start laughing, then you cry. The great failed romances of the 20th century. Love may be a sham, but we still gotta try.